Good evening, everyone. Welcome to inaugural episode of Workplace Trends India Leadership Series. In this series, we have several Indians and international leaders coming on the platform to share their experience and leadership stories as well as insight for the future of work. We are honored to have with us today Professor Bill George of Harvard University, former CEO of Medtronic, a director of Goldman Sachs and the Mayo Clinic, and the best-selling author of the book Discover Your True North, and the several other titles. A trustee of World Economic Forum, he has served as a board chair for many international corporations. With several awards for business and leadership under his belt, he is considered an authority on the same. Please join me in welcoming him for introduce our theme for the today. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to greet all of you and say thank you for joining in. I hope we look forward to your questions. Hope we can have a dynamic dialogue on the question of the future of work, and I'll throw out some provocative ideas. But let me say the context of this is set across the COVID-19 crisis that is truly a global crisis. And if we ever thought we could shrink back to just being national countries and doing everything within our own borders, I think the virus knows no borders, and it is spread around the globe. And even in India, which started out much slower, I believe it's the fourth largest country, for sure, probably the first or second largest population, but still it's spreading rapidly. And here in the US, people talk about second wave. We're not done with the first wave. It's continuing to 20,000 new cases a day and about 1,000 deaths. So very serious, and it's created a huge economic crisis. And with everyone sheltering in place for several months, and I think being on guard and not going back to a normalized for at least a year until we have half the population vaccinated with a vaccine that truly works. How we do work is changing dramatically. Now, in the midst of all this, we have two other crises in the United States that hopefully you don't have in India, and that is a very severe racial crisis. I live in Minneapolis, not far from where George Floyd was murdered by a policeman, and a very horrifying 9-minute video that's gone viral all over the world. And it's very shocking to see the stores you go to every day boarded up and windows blown out as the protests continued, and they're continuing around the United States and around the world. And here in the United States, we have a problem of political cleavage, which we've been split in two, and this is not healthy. And I think we need to, in the business community, to step up to really help people come back together. And that gets me to how do we look at our people? And one thing the COVID-19 crisis has really brought home to us is the value of our first-line workers. You know, unfortunately, all too often around the world, we've ridden on the backs of first-line workers. We've taken advantage of them. We've paid them well below what you would call a living wage. I realize it differs in every country. It's different in India than it would be in Germany or would be in the United States. We have not provided an adequate living for people, and therefore they can't enjoy the benefits of life that all of us in this call have the opportunity to get. And so I think we need to reconceptualize the nature of work, who's doing the work, and at the same time, the nature of management. I hate to say it, teaching in one of the world's leading business schools, but much of what we teach at business schools is largely irrelevant to where we need to go forward. When you're leading in a crisis, all those ideas of control systems and 5 to 10 year strategic plans and all the processes we put in place kind of go out the window. And the leadership in a crisis is very, very different than managing in normal times. And what we're seeing in this crisis, who are the real leaders that step up? And they'll surprise you. They aren't necessarily the people with the big titles. Who are the heroes that are doing the work? I have one of my former MBA students spent 36 days working 14 hours a day in the COVID wing of New York Presbyterian Hospital. And every day he reported another patient had died and the pain he experienced, and he had no opportunity for emotional recovery from that. He is an executive with Johnson & Johnson, but he went down to the ward. He had kept his practice alive, but he went down to the wing and spent full time there during this time. It's those kinds of people that are the real heroes. And we're seeing the importance of pharmaceutical companies, biopharma companies again, but how things are being done is going to change dramatically. So rather than getting into all the ideas, I'm going to turn it back to Tushar and let him kind of provoke me with some questions, challenge me, and then I hope you will, so we can get into an honest dialogue. And I'll say some things some of you may not only not agree with, you may even consider offensive, but please understand I do this in the spirit of having an honest dialogue and really getting down, because it does us no good to talk in flowery terms like we might a Davos speech. We need to get down to the real issues.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. It is an honor to have a dialogue with you on this platform. Professor, you have written a lot of articles in Forbes and Fortune magazines. I was reading about, the future of work, the creative strategies being adopted by companies to survive right now. Everywhere, this pandemic has affected life worldwide, globally. How are they addressing sustainability? How are the companies are surviving in this time by using creative methods?
Well, no doubt, everyone has had to go online. At Harvard Business School, we converted in 1 week, and we weren't sure our IT systems would hold up. From everyone coming to class, when they went off for spring break, they came back 1 week later, and 1,800 MBAs got 3 classes a day for 80 minutes each through Zoom. Amazing. And we had to learn how to teach on Zoom. Most of us have not been trained to do this. It changed everything. At the Mayo Clinic, where I've served on the board, we've been struggling to get more telemedicine. Mayo wants to expand its reach far beyond Rochester, Minnesota, or Jacksonville, Florida, or Scottsdale, Arizona, to the whole world. How does it do that? Telemedicine visits have gone from 7,000 a week to 350,000 a week. That happened in 3 weeks. So the whole nature of delivering medicine is changing. The nature of retail, the companies that have done well, there's some companies done extremely well. Amazon obviously has done well because that's the business they're in. But Target and Walmart did really well. And by the way, the first thing Doug McMillon did at Walmart and Brian Cornell at Target, an hour later, McMillon came out and put out $550 million in cash for his frontline workers, not for his managers, not for supervisors, just for frontline managers. Brian Cornell did the same thing with $350 million at Target, and they've now extended that compensation because they realize these are the people risking their lives. They're not sitting at home doing a Zoom call. They're risking their lives on the front line with people around them. They're working in warehouses. And I think that is so important that we rethink about that. And what are we all doing to contribute to this rather than acting in a withdrawn managerial sense? Now, we're learning that much of the work can be done from home. It can be done in a different way. I talked to the head of one of your largest Indian companies, and he said, our productivity started out at about, this is way back in early April. Our productivity started out about 70% of what it was. This is huge software, one of the world's largest software companies. You recognize the name in an instant. And he said it was about 70%. He said, now it's 110%. Why? A lot of people are enjoying it. They don't have to commute 2 hours a day into Mumbai, downtown Mumbai, to do their work. They can do it from home. Now, some people don't have an adequate workspace at home. I talked to the head of Hewlett Packard, and he was talking about our business-to-business business is doing terribly. Our business-to-consumer is doing well. And I said, what's the difference? Shouldn't every company equip their people fully 100% electronically, including all the first-line workers? Don't we give them that opportunity? So I think travel is going to change dramatically. I keep challenging people. Why in the world, if you want to have a business review, why would you send 6 people from Mumbai to Dallas, Texas to have a business review? Why don't you do it online? I mean, that's a big waste of time. I don't care if you have a company plane, the amount of time to travel is exactly the same. And then you get into jet lag and all those kind of things. Why don't we just do it right now? Why do we have to wait a month to schedule a meeting? Let's just have it tomorrow, today. So I think that's all going to change. We still want the face-to-face contact with our people. We want the sense of community. People are figuring out how to build communities. I've been in more virtual cocktail parties at 6 o'clock at night where everyone gets together and has a more informal conversation. But we've got to find new ways of doing things. We've got to rethink how can we be creative and innovative. So the innovators are going to win. Those that go on offense and change their strategies to adapt to the new world rapidly, fast, are going to be the winners. Those that hold back and try to go back to the old ways are going to be the losers. I'll give you an example of a loser. Tyson Foods, largest meat packer in the United States, one of the largest in the world. Okay? What are they doing? They're hiring immigrants and they're forcing them to go to work in unsafe conditions. And they even got the American law changed so they have no liability for causing for their employees getting COVID-19. So a lot of the employers are afraid to come to work. But if you don't come to work, you get fired. And the governor of the state of Iowa said you lose your unemployment compensation. So is this the way we treat people? I mean, can you imagine? Are we paying people fair wages? You know, I think we're going to have to redistribute the funds, frankly, from middle managers, where we have too many of them, to the people doing the work. And I think that's required. And I think travel will go way down. We still want to see customers. We still want to visit. We still want to be with our customers. We still want to travel internationally. But I think the percentage-wise is going to go down 60, 70%. Retail. Why do we need to go to retail? We can buy online. People are learning how to do that. People didn't know how to shop online. We have the largest mall in the world right here in Minneapolis, the Mall of America. It just opened. Guess what? There are no customers. They've reopened. Maybe a third of the stores are open. There are no customers out there. People can shop online. Well, who needs it? So, and I talked to the online people. You better figure out how you can do it just as well online. And can you sell all your goods just as well? Can you buy shoes? I talked to somebody at a major Nike. How are you going to sell shoes to people? How do they know if they fit or not? And how are you going to, yeah, you just have to figure these things out. But the innovators that go on offense are going to be the winners. Those that hold back and think, oh, we're going back to business as usual. You can forget it. You can just forget it. I'm not going to a soccer game. I was planning a big soccer tour. I'm not going to a soccer tour with 60,000 of my new best friends crowded together in a stadium where people are cheering, and that's a fast way to catch it. So this disease has not gone away. But it is, I think the important thing is that the winners are the ones that go on offense and figure out the new world faster. They innovate faster. They reward the innovators. They knock away the bureaucracy. The losers are those like Macy's that thinks they're going back to business as usual and bringing back 125,000 people. Many of those people will never be brought back. So the nature of work will change dramatically. Tushar?
Yeah, so Professor, I totally agree. I was listening to Mr. Ajay Kamal a few days back. I think he was speaking on one YPO meeting. That, you know, earlier a lot of people used to come to meet him from, you know, different countries. Today he feel after using Zoom so much, why I invited those, you know, people, you know, wasting so much of time and coming to meet them. That meeting can happen in like half an hour on the Zoom or maybe other media. So I think the world is changing. The overall, you know, the circumstances are changing. But Professor, in this time, how you see this COVID-19, this behavior is changing the all stakeholder mindset. So there are employees, customers, suppliers, communities, stakeholders. Like, you know, what is your point of view? Like the government, like we are all stakeholders in one ecosystem. What is your point of view, Professor, on that?
Well, I have to put this in an American context to start out, and having worked on the board of Goldman Sachs, being very close to the stock market and everything. Look, we've had this war going on between, if you will, the advocates of what's called shareholder primacy. In other words, your job, it's the old Milton Friedman philosophy, your job is to make a profit to please the shareholders and give back all the cash you don't need. I'll tell you, the companies gave back all the cash they didn't need are now companies called Hertz, J.C. Penney, J. Crew, AMC Theaters. You know what? They had too much debt and they're bankrupt. They're bankrupt, and a lot more are going to follow them because they didn't have a conservative balance sheet. I think there's going to be a big shift to the stakeholder model. I've been a believer in that for, well, in the 13 years I was at Medtronic, I was a big believer in it. Any company, I'll take a very strong statement, any one person on the line, if you don't put your customers first and deliver more value to your customers, value in terms of innovation, better quality, lower cost, better services. But if you don't deliver better quality, better value than your competitors, you'll be out of business. That's why General Motors went out of business. They were delivering less value at a higher price. And that led to their bankruptcy back in 2009. So put your customers first. What is it that motivates your people? I learned this at Medtronic. Medtronic people are not motivated by making 61 cents a share. I can say they don't know how to do that. What they do know is how to make a quality product that will save someone's life. And they get passionate about that. I'm making a heart valve that's going to save someone's life, Mr. George. That's what they get passionate. An engineer, they don't get excited about making more money, they think cynically that's just going all to management. They get excited about a breakthrough idea that can save lives or change the nature of work or change how people do things. That's what excites. The frontline people, the sales people, the service people on the front lines, they get excited about helping a customer, delivering, helping them run their businesses better. If you're in the IT business, helping your customers run their business, that's what they get excited about. So why are we not focusing on motivating them to serve customers? And if you do that, you'll be successful. A great example here in the United States is Delta Airlines versus United and American. Now, Delta this year gave $1.6 billion bonus to their frontline workers. Now, who are these people? They're the pilots, they're the flight attendants, they're all the people that you see, the gate people that really want it to work because they had great on-time delivery. American declared bankruptcy with $600 million on its balance sheet so they could get rid of all the healthcare benefits and all the pension for their employees. United, it takes people off of airplanes to give employees seats so they can move from one town to the next, and they haul people off physically off it. Look, that is not how you run an organization, and you can translate that to any business. So if you take care of your customers, that's what motivates your people. And frankly, we forgot about our communities. Our communities matter. No one's done that better than Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas, a nothing community, a little farm agriculture community, 25,000 people. Now it's a booming metropolis with great museums and great schools. Yeah, they had to have that. Why would you go to work if you were coming from Delhi? Why would you go to work in Bentonville, Arkansas to take over IT for all of Walmart if you couldn't get decent education for your kids, if you couldn't live in a safe place? So I think that the whole stakeholder model is really kind of, and by the way, I've been convinced. I gave a talk to the American Academy of Management back in 2001. I was leaving Medtronic. They gave me an award and I gave this talk, and I said, basically, that's the way you make money. You create value for your customers. Then you can charge a fair price. If you create great value, look at Apple. They charge high prices, but they create great value. So if you're creating value for your customers, they will pay. If you're providing software that transforms their business, they will pay. And so I think that really has changed the whole game here. And now the stakeholder model, I wrote an article on this for Fortune a couple of weeks ago, has really changed. And the emphasis is on the state, all your stakeholders. And that's the way you create long-term shareholder value. How do companies like, why is Microsoft the most valuable company in the world? Because they've created sustainable long-term value. And that's, they had a lull period under Steve Ballmer for 14 years, but they've come back now under Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella is one of the greatest CEOs in the world today. I'd put him up against anyone today. A fantastic human being. He was born in India, not saying because he was born in India. I'm telling you, you talk to any customer, and I know all the CEOs who visit with him, not all of them, but a lot of them, they say, man, he's personally available for me. He'll always be there to help me. If we got a problem, he'll solve it. He'll send a team in and help me solve my problems. That's the way you make money today, I think. Excuse me. Back to you, Tushar.
Yeah. So, Professor, I think you mentioned that the frontline employees being given more importance than middle managers. And after the pandemic, do you see the evidence for this? Like, as you've already mentioned, a couple of examples, but do you think this mindset will go for long or stay for long?
I think it will, but I think we need to reconceptualize the role of middle manager. I've told a number of CEOs, count how many layers do you have between yourself and the frontline person? It should be about 3. And a couple of them gulped and said, God, I got 7. But you got too many. How many, what's your span of control? It should be in the range of 18 to 20, not 8 to 10. Why not? If you have competent people who know what they're doing and they're based all over the world as we are today, you can have a wide span of control. And now you can pull them together in a moment's notice, as we've talked about on Zoom. Right now we have a worldwide call and it's taking place at different time zones all over the world. But we can do that. We can make it work. But I would say what we need are middle leaders. For instance, why do you have a district sales manager based in Atlanta, Georgia? Why doesn't that person become the lead, the person who takes care of your most important customers? Why aren't they the lead salesperson? And get away from these managerial titles. Why are they managing and tightly reining in all their salespeople? Look, all the numbers are there. You don't have to manage the numbers every day. You give people the goal, you motivate them, they achieve results. And then if they have problems with the customer, you help them. If you're Infosys and you're trying to sell Home Depot and you have a problem with Home Depot, you send in your top salespeople that are in the southeast part of the United States. That's the way you do it. And so I think it's not that we're going to get rid of all the middle managers, is we're going to reconceptualize these roles. There's nothing makes me madder than to check into a hotel and there's a convention or something, there's a long line of people standing, there's some poor woman trying to check people in, and some guy in a suit prancing behind her overseeing what's going on. I feel like saying to the guy, why don't you do some of the work? Why don't you get down here and actually help check people in? Well, I don't know how to run the computers. I said, then you should be out of your job. So we all have to do that. That's all I'm saying. That's happened during COVID-19. People are doing that. They had to jump in. They had to become and get back to that. And I think too much reliance on control and processes and not enough on people. The future is on leaders at all levels, and everyone can lead. Give everyone a chance. I don't care if I had a chance to run a business, a growing business. It went from 200 to 2,000 people when I was 27 years old. And it was a microwave oven business. It became very, very successful. What did I know at 27? I had people twice my age working for me. But my job is to pull people together and make use of the best people and motivate them. So I think that's what I mean. It's not that I'm against middle managers. It's that I want all of us to do the work. I've always done my work, do you? And so I think that's key.
Thank you, Professor. So one thing which I think you've already well captured about this, that do you see any behavioral change, like, the frontline workers, you are empowering them. So what is the behavioral change versus India versus other global countries? Like, so if I compare, like, you keep giving examples of Indian CEOs, Indian people, those who are dominating a lot of, companies and their behavior. Would you see change in other countries versus India?
You want to talk about India?
Yes.
Yeah, why do you have a caste system? Why does it matter? Okay. India has got the greatest education system in the world. Why? Because it's a meritocracy. You can't get in because you're Ratan Tata's son. You get in because you score well on the national test. You have to work really hard. Why do Indians do so well when they come to the United States? Why are there so many? I think there's 25 CEOs of major major American companies that have come from India. By the way, they're all middle-class Indians, by the way. They're not necessarily, they don't come here as wealthy people. A lot of them went to IIT, one of the IIMs, they have very good education. And they, like CEO of my former company. Now, if you all will allow me a little poetic license, with somebody who's in his 60s, whose parents were born in India, but then it became Bangladesh. And so I'm going to consider that part of Greater India. I hope no one takes offense of that. He doesn't. And he totally rebuilt Medtronic as the first non-American ever to run the company. And he's taken a total global view and built a great company. He's got a PhD in electrical engineering from King's College in London, Omar Ishraq. He's done a fantastic job. How? He's a devout Muslim. He goes to Mecca and does the Hajj. So he's totally different than the people who are there, but he's done an amazing job. So I think it all gets down to who is that leader? Are you going to exclude him because he's not American or from the Midwestern United States? So I challenge those of you in India, how many Americans do you have as heading companies? Is that because we're not competent? We speak the same language, I think, a little different accent. Who cares about the accent? Why? Why don't you open up the doors and it's a true meritocracy. So make sure in your company, it is a true meritocracy, okay? It's not that you're son of, or you come from this particular social group or this particular, open it up to everyone and, and then allow the very best people to emerge. And I think your great software companies have really done that. That's why they've been so successful. And I look at a company like Tata Industries, but, it's still not open at the top, though. I couldn't become CEO. No American could. And so it's still got a ways to go there. So that'd be the challenge I'd leave you. But I do think India has enormous potential because the underlying education system, because of the strength of the middle class. A country is known by the strength of its middle class. In America, we're losing the middle class. It's a tragedy. In Germany, has a very strong middle class, very strong. And their education system provides that. And by the way, they honor people who are plumbers and carpenters and people who run machine tools. You work for Siemens and you run a machine tool, a computer robot-driven machine. That's a very honorable job. You don't have to go to university to get ahead. And I think the Germans have done a very good job of that. The rest of us could do a better job on that. If you want to become a computer science whiz, you don't have to necessarily get a liberal arts degree. You can do all that. And I just think the whole education system is going to change. We haven't talked about that too, Shar, but education will change dramatically to online education. Georgia Tech, my alma mater, give you an example, had a computer science program, was ranked one of the top 10, but certainly not number one. They did an online computer science program. They now have 10 times as many graduates with a master's in computer science from Georgia Institute of Technology, one of the world's leading technological institutions, okay? 10 times as many graduates, now the largest in the world, okay? And by the way, the quality for that work is very high. I still prefer to teach leadership in person, but when it comes down to teaching computer science or engineering or mathematics or physics, there's no reason you can't do it online. So I think the nature of education is going to change dramatically. And I think mid-career education, make sure that everyone in your organization has a chance for ongoing education. Education does not end in your mid-20s. Education has to go into your mid-70s or more, because I think it's an ongoing thing. You're learning every single day.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. So one thing which you have already mentioned in your Forbes article, and I think in both the articles, that part-time workers, due to this pandemic, the part-time workers, contract workers, freelancers are need of the hour, and without giving any benefits and provision. Do you think this will be a future for work, and this trends will keep increasing even post-pandemic?
Yes, but not always for the right reasons. I think more companies will go to part-time and temporary workers. I think more people who have a two-career family and are managing the family as well as trying to work will take part-time jobs and can do a lot of it at night and from their homes. But oftentimes the motivation of the companies is make sure they don't get benefits, healthcare being a huge benefit and a very important cost. So there are sensitive issues here, not just about what the hourly pay is or what the compensation for that work is. We have the gig economy here. It's growing rapidly. You look at Uber and people like that, and a lot of people working 2 and 3 jobs. And in part, that's because they're not paid a living wage. That's why they're working in the gig economy. I think it will grow rapidly, and I think more companies will not want to have as many permanent workers. So we have a ways to go in thinking about this. And so I just say in your company, make sure that people are fairly compensated and fairly treated. Because right now during COVID-19, when everything shut down, I can tell you those people had no unemployment compensation. They could apply for unemployment, but they didn't have any benefits to fall back on. The companies were not furloughing them, keeping their benefits, their health care, so they had nothing to turn to. And that's a problem, not having a national healthcare system where everyone's insured. But certainly you don't have that in India either. And so this is a real problem. And by the way, I think this whole crisis is going to revive the nature of savings. The Chinese have been very big on saving. America is not. We've been very big on spending. And I think it's going to revive the reason why people are going to be saving more. And I think that's a good thing. I come from a very fiscally conservative family, and I believe in it. And I still believe in it to this day. Never spend more than you make, and save something every year. And pretty soon you're in much better shape to withstand losing your job or a downturn like this.
Yeah. So basically, Professor, you have already well covered about the future of work, and I think this session is more about future of work. You have given a few trends. So I'm getting questions from people, and as well as my question is also because I represent workspace industry where how the offices will be in future. The emerging trends are people are working from home. People are like the TCS in India has said that they will be working from home. Like a lot of Google said. A lot of companies are saying that till so and so time we will be working from home. So what do you see trends are emerging, and what are the top 3 trends in the future of work, and maybe different business lines? But what is in your opinion the new trends will be for the future of work?
Here's the contrast. A couple of years ago, we were at Apple, and Tim Cook gave us a tour of his building that was the brand new Apple headquarters. You could put 4 soccer fields, full-size soccer fields, 100 meters long, inside just with the building going around it. It was enormous. That may be the last of those really great giant buildings that's built. A major Indian CEO told me, he said, we're going to hoteling. And what's hoteling mean? You'll have a space where you can work. If you want to come to work, you can work from your home, you can work from the office, but then you make a reservation, you come in and you get a desk and you get it fully equipped and you get all the electronic equipment and you come in and use it. And everything's online. It's not really your desk. You don't have files there. You don't have an executive assistant, maybe somebody to assist you and all in getting set up. But it's more like having a hotel space than it is a permanent office. And I think the amount of office space is going to come down dramatically, just like the amount of retail space is going to come down dramatically. And so I think companies will reconception. Now, how do you get everyone together? Well, you have meetings, you have conference rooms, you have places where you can have private discussion, and people will do that. And you can do your meeting on Zoom. But I think people will find ways to collaborate. Accenture went this way a long time ago. They have 500,000 people. And that's what they have. You don't have a private office Accenture, and they're paying their people very well. A lot of them working from home, a lot of them traveling on the road, or they come into an office. Microsoft's done that for their whole field force. So I think that'll become much more the norm rather than these huge offices where everyone has a private workspace. So it's not just an open office. A lot of the big companies are going to open offices, but but at the same time, I think there'll be far fewer offices on a permanent basis. So just my idea, so something to think about.
So it is quite scary for me, I'm in the same business. So you say that the business demand will go down, but the article says like a lot of people are saying that this much of percentage will be going down. This kind of changes is happening, but I'm sure that the offices will not die. What is your opinion, like in terms of, if I ask like in percentage, how much percentage you see the offices will be going down?
Well, I think you want to reconceptualize what that office is, and what is it that attracts people to come to the office rather than working from home, and what do they do when they get there, and how do they collaborate? I think the future of work is collaboration, not individual performance, and I think people working together as a team. My motto for leadership comes out of soccer, or what the Europeans call football, where the coach gets people to play well as a team. He gets everyone in the right position on the field, but then they've got to really work closely together. And I think organizations that know how to collaborate. And by the way, I think here's the problem we got. We have global companies operating up here across 150 countries, and almost all the companies I work with are truly global. But then you get these national governments that are putting constraints in, making that difficult. And we've moved kind of away from globalization at the national level. Certainly America has, Britain has, but a lot of countries have. I think it's a global business world. I don't think in business you have any choice but to be global. And I think the COVID-19 changes and the economic impact is telling you that we need to operate globally, and we need to figure out time zones, and we need to cut through any kind of cultural barriers or differences. We have lots of different cultures on this phone. It shouldn't stand on this call. This shouldn't stand in the way of getting the work done. We have to collaborate. I'll give you an example. Way back when I was at Medtronic in the mid-1990s, that's 25 years ago, we were pushing hard to get new defibrillators out. It had tremendous number of lines of code, 5 million lines of code. So the software went to a 24-hour-a-day schedule. So what would happen is the Americans would come in about 7:30 in the morning. They'd work till 6:30, 7 at night. They would download all their work to India. Then our Indian partners would pick up on the work, and they would work what was daytime for them for 10, 11 hours. They'd download it. They found actually the quality went up because the Indians were more disciplined in documentation than the Americans. Americans came on to change things. But nonetheless, it got us there in half the time. We were able to cut our lead times down in half. And so that was a breakthrough for us because we could get ahead of our competitors by getting to market a lot faster with an extremely complex system. But it had to be perfect. If there was a software glitch in that system, somebody could die because you might fire that defibrillator when it shouldn't be fired, or it might not be fired when it needed to be fired. So you have to make sure it's perfect from a quality standpoint. But then you have to get cultures that know how to collaborate, that know how to work together. So I'm sad to see our leaders at the national level, our presidents, prime minister, whatever you want to call them, feuding and going for themselves. Our politicians, you can see I'm cynical about politicians, but I'm delighted to see all of our corporate leaders around the world working closely together. And I think it is getting a much smaller world from the standpoint of the great global companies. They all realize we need each other. By the way, a comment I didn't mention before, Tushar, about stakeholders. We're now realizing how important our suppliers are. I'll give you an example. Medtronic had the ventilator, which came through an acquisition, 1% of its business, 1%, okay? Based in Galway, Ireland. They have 1,100 parts in that very complex ventilator that was keeping people alive during COVID-19. When you get pneumonia, you want to have that Medtronic ventilator, I can tell you, the high-end one to keep you alive. But these came from 91 countries. The whole question was supply chain. How did they pull that whole supply chain together and make sure it worked? And then they went out and they took the next level defibrillator. They had a very high one, then the next level, and they open sourced it. So guess who's producing it now? Tata Industries. Foxconn has built a factory in Wisconsin. Chinese company or Taiwanese company is building there. Okay, a company like Baylis up in Canada. So it's a global sourcing. Why not? Now everyone can get ventilators. And so the problem they had about who gets them, do they go to Ireland? Do they go to the FEMA in America? Do they go where, you know, they can be built and they provide plenty of product for everybody. And I think that's the kind of way to think about it and to rethink about your global supply lanes. I would not put everything like the pharma companies have and have all my APIs, my underlying materials from one place, one supplier. I think you want to have multiplier in different geographic zones. Who knows what's next? We could have huge trade wars like between the US and China. I think those trade wars will be revived almost inevitably. I hate it. I hate trade wars. I hate tariffs. And by the way, in India, I would say you better start protecting intellectual property. I know your government doesn't want to do that, but I'm a big believer. If I'm spending $1 billion on a new product and I control the intellectual property, you can steal all my furniture, all my equipment, but if you take my intellectual property, you've taken the most valuable thing I have. So I think we need to honor that all around the world. I realize the problem at low end, but India has plenty of generic drug companies that can provide people after the patent period. I don't think patents should be extended, but I think it should be honored for that period. So I feel pretty strongly about that. My son used to run the second largest generic drug company in the world. Yeah, and why not? And this will help a lot of people. But I think we have to honor the intellectual property. And I think that gets to the integrity between nations and between companies.
So I was reading one of your articles where you have said that the technologies and digital strategies are changing the future of the companies. I think what it is said, and I can get out of your conversation also, that the companies those are performing better are right now either technology companies or adopting technologies for their businesses. What do you think the focus should be for the large and medium companies in short term and long term?
Well, I've had a lot of CEOs. We've been at Harvard, we've been hosting, we do a program for new CEOs of large companies, including Indian CEOs. And what they're all saying to us is we had a 3 to 5 year digitization plan. That's been collapsed into 3 to 5 months. We'll have that all done by the summer. In other words, you cut through all the bureaucracy, everything falls away, you just have to do it. Every company has to be digital. This is not a question of high-tech companies, a question if you're Microsoft or you're a social media company like Google. No, every company must be fully digitized. By the way, that breaks down all the global barriers too. How do we communicate unless we are? So I think one of my colleagues, Sadal Neely, has really written and a lot about this. We're teaching it in our program, Leading Global Business, which is my favorite program at HBS, a one-week program. But you know, globalization and digitization go hand in hand. So if you're going to be a global company, you have to be fully digital, and you have to provide all those tools, not just your management, but everybody. Okay, give everyone access. Give them access to the numbers. That's why we can have a rational discussion until we do that. So I think every company's got to move out on this, and so the companies that don't are going to be left behind. That's why I talked about retailers like Macy's, J.Crew, J.C.Penney getting left behind. The ones that have moved ahead in this whole field, like Best Buy, which at one time thought its sales were going to be down 70% in the quarter ending April 30th. Turned out they were only down 6% because they converted everything online so fast. And they did takeout and all kinds of things. But the point is, their stores were all closed. 51,000 people are laid off. They're now reopening, but The point is, if you don't have that you don't have the flexibility. You can't move quickly. You can't become truly global. So I think it's not a question of high-tech companies versus non-high-tech companies. Every company has to do that. And I don't know any major companies that are not thinking that way now. The ones that are going to be left by the wayside. I hate to be harsh, but I think that's just reality. And I think we have to face that reality. Is your company fully competitive on from a digital standpoint? If you're not, you may find that you're losing out to your competitors.
Yeah, so I think that's why we are sitting across the table today, Professor. We are trying to make the community, we are trying to disrupt the technology, our business by technology. And that's why we are doing these webinars and trying to engage people and our clients. But Professor, like one thing which I want to ask, like any example of Indian company which you feel that has digitally disrupted the market and taken the advantage of the situation to make the digital empowerment or digital change in the company. Do you have any example in mind?
Well, Wipro has, that's for sure. Yeah, Wipro's moved very quickly, and it's worked very well for them. And I know the CEO well, and he's a fantastic CEO, and they've moved very fast to get there, and it's paying off for them. And they're a great global company, and they can provide their customers all around the world with better services and help them do that collapsing. The company may not know how to do it. They can provide those services, and you have people trained all over the world. So whether the work's done in India or whether it's done in America, or whether it's done in Great Britain, they can provide that capability. So that'd be one example of a company that has done it well.
So, I think I read your book, Discover Your True North. And then when I was in the class with you,
I'm proud of it. I hope you all will read it.
The best-selling book. So, Professor, so I remember my days when I attended your classes about the authentic leadership. So I would like to ask you another thing on that what are the key values for authentic leadership? How is this tied to the responsible capitalism? So it is like very simple, like we try to apply this to authentic leadership in our life. What is the key aspect in simple words we can explain? Because a lot of audience are sending questions around that, and people are really willing to hear from you about that favorite subject of yours.
Well, for a human being, for you as a leader, it really starts with understanding the purpose of your leadership. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to suffer slings and arrows of so much criticism? Why do you want to take on these challenges and stresses? Because you want to make a difference in the world. So you need to know your purpose, your personal purpose, and you need to know your values. Is integrity a value? Are you emphasizing that in everything you do? Are you known by your word? Do you engender trust among people? Are you real? People know today who's real and who's not. You can see when, I'll give you an example, a negative example. When Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook loses sight of the company's values, and because he's going for commerce, his employees are walking out on it. They're resisting. They're saying they won't do it. And even though he has a total control over that company, he's facing a revolution internally because they don't know where their leaders' values. So you want to, as an individual, you want to be that trustworthy person. If I commit to you, you can count on me to get it done. If I can't, I'll come back and tell you. I'll ask for your help. And so that's what it means to be authentic. It means to be genuine, to be real, to have that clear sense of purpose, a clear set of values, and then to collaborate with people to make a difference. Now, I think as leaders, as an authentic leader, your challenge is to get everyone aligned around that. So is there an alignment between everyone's personal purpose and their values on one hand, and the company's purpose and values, okay? I left Litton Industries many, many years ago because there could never be a congruence of my values and their values. So I had to leave because I could see from the chairman and CEO that we were just so much at variance. I could run my division, which I had the opportunity to do, and I could wall them off, but if I wanted to go higher, it couldn't work. And so it's like a house built on a solid foundation. Those are your values, okay? Now, leading in crisis is very different. But I can tell you the companies are doing a good job. They start knowing what they're, take Johnson & Johnson, famous for its credo. You know, our job is to serve our customer. Alex Gorski is turning the company upside down to get a vaccine. This is a business they weren't even in 5 years ago. And he's going to spend billions of dollars to get that vaccine. He may never make a dime on it, but he realized that's consistent with their credo. And that's what the employees want to do. So you can get your employees aligned around values if your values are solid as a leader. And if they're not, you're not going to get there, because leadership is character. And if your character is not sound, so I would challenge all of you, do you have integrity? Do you approve paying bribes? If you do, you got a basic problem, because those, some people call it bashish. I remember Narayan Murthy, I interviewed him and wrote a case on Infosys and the founding of Infosys. He just refused to do it. Said we're not going to be the largest Indian company, we're going to be the most respected, because we're going to stand by our principles. So you have to do it at all times. If that means you lose a contract to Reliance Electric, so be it, okay? You have to stand for integrity, because if you don't, how can you expect your people to? How can you set a standard for your organization unless if you don't set the standard, how can you expect your people to do it? Why would they trust you? Okay, so I think leadership is all tied up in those simple things, knowing who you are, what you believe, what your purpose in leading is, and your values, and then getting a congruence between your organization's values, its purpose. And today, the mission-driven companies are winning. The ones that are clear about their mission and know what it is are the winners, and the ones that are all over the map or conglomerates, that's what happened to GE. GE went from under Jack Welch in the late 20th century, the greatest company in the world. Today, there will never be the GE we knew again. It is gone. There may be a GE Medical, a GE Energy, power plants, but the GE we knew of the old days is gone. And I think it's very hard to run conglomerate, because GE's purpose is making money. That's not inspiring to young people today. You will not get the best millennials if your only purpose is making money. You make money because you do all these other things well. I've done well, but only because we do these other things well. That's the outcome. And I think that's how you can bring people together. And by the way, I'm a very strong believer as a leader, Tushar, you need to empower your people. It's not about exerting power over other people. The President of the United States is a power master. He knows how to intimidate people. That's not what leadership's about today. No successful CEO I know today is leading that way. Some of the owners are, but the people who came up to a meritocracy, I don't know any CEOs that are leading that way today. Those who came up to a meritocracy. Sometimes the owners come in and act like they're the bosses. They can buy you, own you, whatever, I'm a billionaire. But the ones that really understand, take a Ratan Tata. He built a great company. He's a great human being. I can tell you, he's there with his people. When I talked to him just last year at this time, June a year ago, he came to Harvard and we had a long discussion. And when the bombing occurred at the Taj, where I stayed at the Taj Palace in Mumbai, and when that bomb, and there are people in that building, guess what the first thing, he went from his office in downtown Mumbai, and he got in his car and drove to the site. And he wanted to go in the building. Now the security guards, the police wouldn't let him go in. It was all walled off. And he stood there and he said he watched in horror as people were killed. The significant thing about that is that almost every employee stayed there and they got out 1,200 customers who were in the hotel safely. Why? Why? Because he ordered them to? No. Because they were afraid to get fired if they didn't? No. They stayed there because they created a culture that was loyal to its customers. And those Mumbai people, these are first-line people, risking their life to help their customers. That's the kind of integrity you want in an organization. That's how you win as an organization. And by the way, Mr. Tata, personally, I negotiated a deal when I was at Honeywell back in 1984. So we know each other well and we stayed in touch over the years. But I can tell you, he personally paid for everyone's, any kind of health consequences that came out of that episode. And you know what he did? He also paid for all the health costs for the employees of the Oberoi. Can you believe that? His number one competitor right across town, Oberoi, is a great hotel chain, fantastic. I've stayed in hotels, both fantastic. But I can tell you, that's integrity. That's what I mean, you're true there. You know, he could have pulled back and kept it all for himself. He didn't have to do that. But I tell you, no one that works for Tata is ever going to forget that story. They didn't have to be in Mumbai that day. They know that Ratan Tata was there for him. He went to the scene of the crisis. Other people run, hide in their offices. They never got there. Look at Tony Hayward when they had the gusher in the Gulf, Macondo down in British Petroleum, and the thing blew up. and he didn't go there, and he complained about having to miss his yachting event that weekend, and he said he wanted his life back after 11 of his employees had been killed. No, he didn't go to the scene. You got to be there. You got to be there in a crisis with your people. And by the way, don't sit back in your office and Zoom today. If your employees are on the front lines risking their lives, why don't you get out with them? Out, be with them, talk to them. I joined the protesters here in Minneapolis the other day. Yeah, it's a risk of COVID, particularly my age. Penny and I went up there. We wanted to be with them. And by the way, half of the protesters were white. Half of them are black, half of them are white. Well, maybe half were, 45% were black, 15% non-white, non-African American, and 40%. But anyway, the point was, you got to be there with people in a crisis. That's your test. And so I think leading in a crisis is very different, Tushar, than it is in normal times. But you never lose sight of the vision. The people like Omar Ishraq and Medtronic knew the vision was to help patients. That ventilator became critical. They never thought it would before. I say it's 1% of the business. They knew how. Alex Gorski, I talked to him at great length at J&J. Ken Frazier at Merck, they're saying this is what counts. They weren't even in the vaccine business. We've got to make this. We've got to save lives. We've got to step up, because we know our mission is what counts. And so they had that vision. They never deviated. But by the way, the winds are blowing really hard in a crisis. Things are, you don't know where, so you have to tack back and forth. But if you do it from a solid base, you can get to your end goal. But if you don't have that solid base, you won't get there. And that solid base comes from you, the leader, at all levels of your organization. So you need to be the role model of that leader. You need, as Gandhi said, you need to be the change that you want to see. If you're not that change, you're trying to direct change in your company and you're not behaving like that, it's never going to happen. So Gandhi's a great man that Martin Luther King learned from, and a lot of people did. But just that one simple phrase, we use it all the time here, talking about right now, be the change you want to see. And so never forget that. I realize I sound like I'm preaching, so forgive me, but I think these things are so important. I feel very passionate about them. So forgive me, Tushar.
Yeah, so Professor, I remember our one lecture where you spoke on Tata, and the same, I think most of the class mates have, selected or opted a choice like, who's the most authentic leader in the country right now? And Ratan Tata, I think you again elaborated on the same. So Professor, another question which is coming, through people also, and then in Q&A box also, that could you elaborate on the debate between shareholder primacy and the stakeholder capitalism? I understand that you believe in stakeholder capitalism, as it helps meet emerging needs, inspire employees, partners with suppliers, and build community. What is your point of view on that?
You can see I'm a big believer in stakeholder capitalism, but I think that's the only way you create sustainable shareholder value. The first book I wrote in 2003, I couldn't write a book when I was at Medtronic, much as I wanted to, because I was so focused 24/7 on my job. But when I wrote this book, that's what I said then. The real creators of sustainable value for their shareholders are the ones that created sustainable value for their customers. And they created great jobs for their employees. When I went to Medtronic, Medtronic started with one employee, Earl Bakken. It had 4,000. I got their day as 100,000. You better make sure all 100,000 of those people are being well treated today, just like they were when I was there. It's got to be sustainable leadership as well. That's the only way you do it. How does Microsoft do so well? Because they have that sustainability in their leadership. Even if you hit a glitch, you've got to stand for something. You've got to stand for your customers. So I just don't see any deviation from that. I think the hedge funds, those people, people that charge you 2 + 20 to manage your money, they're looking for a short-term gain. They're looking to become billionaires. That's not your goal. You'll do well, but it's not about being a billionaire. Your job, I'll never be a billionaire. It's not the goal. Why would that be the goal? You know what? I don't care what your religion. I don't care if you're Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or a non-believer. You can't take it with you, guys. So the idea that you're going to live off your money and become a hero, forget it. We all want to live a good life. We want everyone to be fairly compensated. But I think I think the great creators of sustainable value, like J&J I mentioned, look over the years how much value they've created because they put their customer first. It's so simple, yet there's so much opposition. Warren Buffett knows exactly. He practices the stakeholder model all the time. He said when there was a controversy, about Nelson Peltz taking over PepsiCo, which I strongly oppose. Indra Nooyi, the CEO, again, an Indian woman who got her undergraduate degree at Madras Christian College, and came to PepsiCo, one of the great leaders of the world. And Buffett backed her up on CNBC, and he said, I believe in running a company for the shareholders are going to stay, not those who are going to leave. And so it's that kind of view. And so think about how you build a long-term enterprise, not a short-term flash in the pan.
So, Professor, I'll just ask one last question from my side, and if you allow, I will take few questions from audience. But
I wish you would. Yeah, that's good.
You are teaching leadership to top the leaders of the world. You are teaching. You are creating leaders. But at the same time, I learned that somewhere I've read that you learned leadership from a coaching youth soccer, and from leading your team at the Medtronic. So what do you tell? What would you like to tell about what is your experience about leadership when you learned from these two events?
Well, one of my great joys was coaching young men in soccer from the age of 7 to 19, and staying with them for all that time and seeing how much better they got, and building what was a team that used to lose 7-0 to build a championship team that became one of the top 8 youth teams in the United States. But that wasn't the important thing. Is that I learned how you really lead, that you don't have to be hands-on, you don't have to do anything. Once the game starts, you let people play the game. And I learned about collaboration, integration, and leading from a sense of values. And I brought in a coach when they were 16 because I wasn't good enough to support me. And I remember when we were in the regional championship, and he took our top scorer and he said, "You're not playing today because you're out for yourself, and I know you're out smoking marijuana last night, and so you're off the team." And he had the courage to do that. So it wasn't just about winning, it was about setting a standard of values for every young man on that team. And I tell you, the players now come back to me, they're in their 40s, they've never forgotten that. That's what they learned, what was important in their life. And many of them are going through broken homes, divorces, and all. So that became a great model for me. But remember, it's the people on the field doing it. It's Lionel Messi's that are doing it for your team. It's not the coach. Everyone thinks it's the coach. No, it's the people on the field that are doing it. So that translates to me directly into business. So go ahead. I'll take some questions.
Yes. So one of, I think, your student, Rahul Rai, is asking, dear Professor George, this question is being asked since you have spoken about the importance of mindfulness. While we all are talking about how the design of office, stores change, and how also the software, the nature of work and how we work, I am curious on how you see mindfulness accelerating or not in our work culture. For me, the biggest lesson from Corona has been the need to slow down and live more in sync with the nature. Most people, when they are able to put aside their anxiety, they have found meaning in spending more time at home with their important relationship. Do you see mindfulness entering corporate culture more? Which companies are leading the way?
Well, I got into transcendental meditation, originated by the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi back in 1975. My wife dragged me to a seminar, kicking and screaming. I didn't want to go. And I've meditated every day ever since. And that's now morphed into mindfulness. We've had the privilege of being with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I have 12 times in this country and in Zurich, and doing seminar with him. My wife has gone all the way to Dharamsala twice to spend a week in his living room working with him. So we've learned a great deal from this great man that India is nice enough to host after he was evicted from Tibet. I think you all know the story. I think today I've tried to bring this into the corporate world and talk about it a lot, because I think we have a very chaotic world. We work off of task lists. I've got 20 things I've got to get done. No, probably a lot of those could be delegated. Are you focusing on the most important? And I think the way we de-stress and the way we get focused, the way we get creative, is through a mindfulness practice. Mine happens to be meditation. Yours might be prayer. It might be a long walk. It might be a jog. It might just sitting in a beautiful part of nature. But I think the idea is we let the trivial drop away to find out what's really important in our lives, and we come out of that focusing on that. By the way, I've learned that my most creative ideas come out of meditations. Why? Because if you have a task list of 20 things, you can't be creative. The best way to be creative is have a tabla rasa, a whiteboard, wipe the slate clean. Well, that's kind of what meditation does, a white slate clean. So many big companies I know are big practitioners of meditation. I mean, Google is, and Medtronic is, and Goldman Sachs is. All these companies now are setting up meditation groups right inside their company. We had a meditation room in Medtronic since 1974. I didn't join the company since 1989. People go down there and meditate. It was a wonderful place. There was a copy of the Quran. There was a copy of the Torah. There was a copy of the Bible, and all these various texts. My son, who is an outstanding doctor at UCSF, he's a head and neck cancer surgeon, went and spent a long time in Nepal and became a disciple of J. Krishnamurti and his beliefs. So I think these beliefs come together. They don't have to be separated by different religious doctrines. But I think it's not a religion, but it is a way of clearing and focusing on what's important in life. And that's when you get back to your purpose and your values. And if you can live by that through the most stressful times, maybe you lose your job, maybe you get fired, maybe you lose but this is a chance to rethink, who am I, what do I want? And the crisis we're in right now, the COVID-19, is causing a lot of us to do that. And I think it's very healthy. There's good things coming out of all the bad that we see around it.
So there is one question, Professor, is coming from Pamela Todd. The leading global teams can add challenges to building trust, which can be more easily overcome by spending time together in person. Do you have any suggestions for developing and strengthening foundation of trust during this time of limited travel?
Yes, I think, trust is best built in person. If you have already built a trust basis, then it's easy to keep it up on Zoom, or keep it up online. If you haven't, then I think you have to create vehicles, like I said, if you will, a virtual social hour at the end of the day, more in-depth discussions. Now that we're going through a racial crisis in the United States, I've been calling all my African-American friends and trying to just hear their point of view. Their life is totally different than mine. Even a guy like Ken Frazier at Merck, who's one of the great CEOs of the world, who's the grandson of a slave, tells me he gets treated totally different than I do. Many of you as Indians who come to the United States may be treated very different than I am. And so we have to have some empathy. We have to have some understanding. We can't eliminate all the bias and hatred and discrimination in the world. I would like to, if I could. And by the way, any company that discriminates, anyone who engages that should be fired. I feel very strongly about that. If you discriminate against other people based on the color of their skin, their gender, their ethnic origin, or their sexual preference, you should be fired. And I don't care if you're the senior executive vice president of the company, you're out, okay? You need to treat everyone as a human being, because if you don't create that kind of culture, you will not have a great organization. And you need to stand for that and get rid of people who don't believe in that. So I just believe that we have a great opportunity. I think we can do it online. We can do it better in person, but in the meantime, build that trust. And that trust comes from you as a leader. If you build trust, why should I trust you if you're not trustworthy? And so if you build that trust with your people, then they will trust you, and you'll be amazed. They'll go the extra mile for you. They'll do anything to make your organization successful. But you have to build that trust, or if you have to go. Part of that's being vulnerable. Are you willing to be vulnerable? Say, I made a mistake. There was a wonderful example here in the United States yesterday. So we had this terrible experience with protesters outside the White House. And so they were protesting peacefully. There was no violence going on. They were protesting, but they were protesting what was going on about the racial injustice in the United States after the killing of George Floyd here in Minneapolis. And so the president wanted to do a photo op. His people had this idea. And so he marched across the way. They used tear gas, they used stun guns, they used rubber bullets to clear the crowd, even though you have in the United States, you have a First Amendment of the Constitution gives you the right to protest peacefully. And they were, but they were all cleared away. And they marched over to church. I'm an Episcopalian Christian. They marched over to St. John's Episcopal Church, and he stood out in front and held up the Bible. He happened to have it upside down. But General Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the top military officer in the United States, went with him. And he had his battle uniform on that day. And he got a lot of criticism from former generals like Jim Mattis, who was Secretary of Defense, 3 Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And Milley came out and apologized, said he made a mistake. Now that's a direct slap in the face at the President of the United States. He said, I never should have walked with the President over there because the U.S. military is to protect our freedom against overseas enemies. It is not to harm American people. And so that took a big man to do that, particularly when it was considered a slap in the face at his boss. That took a lot of courage. And leadership at the end is about courage. You're going to be faced, everyone on this call is going to be faced with a situation. Your courage is going to be tested. Will you step up? Because if you don't, people will not believe when things are going up and away, oh, you're such a great leader. No, they'll want to know, did you have courage when the test was on, when the pressure was on? Did you have the courage to fire your top performer in the company because he violated your company's values? And if you didn't, you will not have a great organization. So that's going to be the real test. I think courage is the real test of every leader. And thank you for asking that question.
So, Professor, I'll just ask 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll finish. So one of my batchmates is asking what will happen like for the luxury goods like the jewelry or luxury car, post-pandemic or in the pandemic, what kind of change you see in the market or in the purchase behavior?
Well, I think it's hard to predict. I think so much will be done online. I think the automobile market is going to go through a very rough time. I think a lot of people in their millennials, a lot of people in their 20s and 30s not even be able to afford automobiles. Public transportation will become more prominent. It's a lot better in other countries. It's terrible in the United States. And a lot of Asian countries, a lot of European countries, much better. We're going to have to afford that. I think new housing, people owning their own homes is going to go down because I think people aren't going to be able to afford a home. Maybe they don't need as big a home. So they're going to rethink a lot of the material goods. I wouldn't want to be in the suit business right now, I can tell you, because everyone's going to dress casually. I don't know how many people on this call have a tie on, but I doubt it's very many. I bet you I'd want to be in the tie business. Even at Goldman Sachs, we took ties off on the board, changed the board protocols, trivial thing. But the point is that I think you want to think about how people are going to behave in the future. I think eating at home has become much more popular, so restaurants are going to become less common. I think all those big conventions, why do you need to go to my son and daughter spend so much time away from their patients going to big medical conventions to give a 40-minute speech, and they're gone 3 days to do that. They go to Korea. I think those conventions are going to go away. I think they'll all be online. I mean, they'll be there, but they'll be online. So I think a lot of that's going to change and change dramatically. And so it's hard to foresee it all, but I know there is change. And the leaders, if you are one of those leaders, you're going to be a winner. You're going to be successful. If you're a resistor and think it's business as usual, you're going to lose out. And so you need to get out in front of the change. And again, what Gandhi said, be the change you want to create. That could be true both in a value sense and how you treat people, because it also could be that in a business sense. And if you can be that change and make it, you'll make mistakes. It's okay. And you be like General Milley, admit your mistakes. I think the test of a leader is you're willing to be vulnerable and say you admit your mistake. If I don't admit my mistakes as CEO of Medtronic, then how can anyone working for me admit mistake? So you have to admit your mistake. Otherwise, you can't be successful. I used to say to people, you never get fired at Medtronic for making a mistake, but you will get fired for covering it up, because no one's clairvoyant. We can solve any problem if you bring it to us. We'll get the best people in the company, we'll get the best people outside the company to help us solve it. We'll solve it. But we can't solve any problem we don't know about until you face that reality. Okay, we didn't face the reality of COVID-19 in the United States for months. We shut off travel to China. Okay, but 40,000 people came in from China. After that, it was spreading all over the United States. I know lots of people that had the disease back in December and January. They just weren't diagnosed back then. I can tell you, we didn't face reality, so we didn't shut down fast enough. Countries that shut down fast, look at Germany, look at South Korea. Look at Singapore. Why have they done so well? Because they move quickly, and they be much faster. And they can go in that V-type economy, come down and come back out. Ours is going to go like this, like that Nike swoosh. It's going to take a while to really get back up and running, even though we're opening up now. And by the way, in a lot of the states that opened up fast, the United States, COVID is increasing rapidly. So watch out. It doesn't know any persons. It doesn't matter whether you're upper class, lower class, how you are, it attacks everyone. So be careful.
Well said, Professor. Like accepting your mistake is a true, authentic leadership. I think we should all accept our mistakes if we do instead of covering. Yeah. So we have one question or last question from Sundar Hem Rajani. He is AMP 180 batch 2011, and he's asking.
Yay.
So we have many questions, Professor. I don't want to take much of your time. A lot of HBS, all your old students are asking questions, but I think we are already 10 minutes out of the time. So. In time of crisis, leaders are expected to unify their followers behind a common goal. Today, instead of doing that, they tend to pander to their base. And why these constraints, contrarian trends are there?
Let's go over that again. I got the part about uniting them towards a common goal. I was with it. And then you said something about they bind to their base. Can you go over that again? That part of the question, the last half.
In time of, so this is the last line he has written. Why this contrarian trend?
To go away from unification? I mean,
Yes,
to me,
yes.
in a time of crisis, that is when you unify, okay? Around a common goal. People look to know that there is that commonality in belief and in values, and you come together. And if you don't do that, you're not much of a leader. This is how you bring people together. And if you move away from that, if you become selfish, you move to your own needs, you move away from what the organization needs, what the people need in the organization, I'll tell you, people will never forget or forgive. They'll always remember in that time of crisis, you weren't there for them. It's like you're going to war, who is there for you? Or like you saw the person on the street, did you reach out and help that person? Or did you walk by that person and ignore them? Were you there for them? Were you there for them when they needed you, when they lost their job? I call CEOs who get fired from their job just to be there for them because everyone abandons them. Were you there for people when you really needed me? And that's the test. And I tell you, if you're there for people when they need you, they'll be there they'll be there for you when you need them. And it's a two-way street. All relationships are two-way streets. There's no such thing as the leader and the follower. I don't believe in followers. I think we empower people to be their best. And my philosophy of leadership, starting out as a very young leader at 27 and being general manager, I have to surround myself with people that are better than I am. When I go to Medtronic and I just joined the company from Honeywell, I have to surround myself with people that are better than I am in every single role. And so I'm not so wise. I just need to listen to these people. And then my job is to bring them together, like that soccer team that plays really well together. But I've got to have people that are better than I am at every position. And when you do that and you empower those people, you'll be shocked at how great the results can be. Shocked. And that's why the organizations are going forward right now that have done this with great leaders. That's why I use Microsoft. Look, Microsoft was a disaster when Satya Nadella took over. It was going straight downhill for 14 years. Been going down. They've been milking Office and Windows. He totally transformed the place. Now it's paying off for him in a crisis. You'll see. Just watch.
So last question, that any advice, parting advice you feel would be helpful to us in India? Like any one advice, like a lot of people from different trades, different industries are here in this room. What is your one advice for us in India?
If I have one concern, is that build your company around integrity, like Narayan Murthy did. Build your company around integrity. It doesn't serve you well to violate that, because if you violate at the highest levels, you can't expect your people to conform at lower levels. And so build it around that, and always put your customers first, but treat everyone fairly and equally. And I think India will emerge as it is one of the great countries of the world, but it'll become even greater. And in a business context, you'll have more and more Indian companies thriving because they follow those principles, because your education systems are so good. You need to continue to work on a couple of those things. But I think I have no doubt, I'm always proud to work with people from India and work with Indian companies. So I think you'll become great global companies. And by the way, if I get one final suggestion, you could open the door to a few non-Indians, not to run the United States or to run Europe, but maybe to take top roles in your companies in India. You might find that diversity is really healthy, because I think the diversity of your company should reflect the diversity of the people you serve, your customers and your employees. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for Professor, for such wonderful insight and taking our time for us here today. And we will be so grateful. We are so grateful, and we look forward to seeing you again in India on this same platform. And thank you to all our audience, those who are attending this session from home. And we hope you are safe and enjoyed the session. Thank you.
And one thing I can add, if I could, Tushar, if I could add one thing. I'm active. A lot of you are on LinkedIn. That's the best forum for me for dialogue. I got about 177,000 people on there, but a lot of them are from India. A lot of them Indian descent in America and in Europe and around the world. I would like to encourage you all, just join me, and I'll certainly, sometimes you have to accept it, but I certainly will. Because I love that forum for dialogue on a global basis. It's really, Tom Friedman said the world's flat, it's really made it flat. So please join me that way. And if you have any questions about True North, let me know, okay?
Thank you, Professor. And we have in this leadership series, the next, we are on 18th, Anshul Jain with Christopher Brown. And we have Diego Sora on 24th. And we have Professor Sunil Gupta on 21st July. And we have Pascal Finet. He is a Singularity University professor on 8th of July. Looking forward to meet you again on this platform. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you.